Welcome to the Nittany Gritty. I am Jon Sauber. He is Tim Frazier, and you are listening to episode 3 of the Nittany Gritty. Hello, and welcome to the Nittany Gritty, brought to you by Beyond the Big Ten. I am Jon Sauber, Penn State men's basketball writer at the Center Daily Times. I am joined, as always, by Penn State legend Tim Frazier. And Tim, it's been a busy week for you.
Yeah, John, it's crazy. On top of, obviously watching Penn State get a big, huge win against Ohio State this past weekend, I ended up moving to Greece, coming back into Greece to play again after, 7 long months off. So obviously, if my internet's a little choppy, you can just blame it on the Greece internet.
How's it feel to get back on the court though? I know it's been a while for you because of the
Oh
injury and
man, it's been a
everything.
while. Yeah, it's been good, man. I had the injury, torn tendon in my foot, so it was a long time coming back. And it's strange. The last time I did that was in Penn State. The last time I had a significant injury, so it was kind of brought it back to my senior year at Penn State. How much you have to learn how to do all, being in a booth and learn all those things all over again. So it was definitely like reminiscing of the things that I went through, and thankfully, then I've already been through it, so I kind of knew the steps of what was going on, and I was able to get back healthy and played yesterday, played pain free. So obviously, that's just a blessing, and thankful for that.
Yeah, we love to hear that. But you mentioned it, Penn State on Saturday with a win that I don't know that we expected. We did a pregame show, and there was a lot of smack talk that wasn't coming from you about some of the past matchups, and it looked like Saturday was a nice little bit of revenge for Penn State, trying to get you some justice from ET.
I'm telling you, man. I talked to Evan and I told him he knew too. Like coming into the Bryce Jordan Center on a Saturday, almost finals. The team is, they had lost 5 games in a row. Man, I'm sure Ohio State had a big game against someone. I think in UCLA the next
Yeah,
game. So
UCLA
now
this Saturday.
they're looking past Penn State, and I told it these are the games that we end up as Penn State and any lines we somehow find ways to win. Obviously, a lot of times it's based on who's desperate enough and who's in tune and locked in at the game at hand. And obviously, you can see that at Penn State was locked in at the game at hand, at least at the end of the game.
Well, and it is funny, like for this win is really strange when you think about a week earlier they had that massive loss that we talked about a bunch. And if you had told me coming out of all of that they would be 6-5, right? Like I would be like, yeah, that makes sense. But the way it happened doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Like losing to number 3
Yeah.
and 30 and beating number 24 a week later is on the same court too. It's not like the Bucknell game was away and the
hmm
Ohio State game was at home. It was really strange, and so it was one of those things. I actually asked Mike Rhodes about this after the game, like what changed in a week, and he talked about like some of the embarrassment that they felt after losing
Yeah.
to Bucknell and all that stuff, and like how they kind of rebounded from that. I'm curious I'm sure you've had bad losses in your career. Everyone has, especially when you've played as long as you have. What is that next game back? Well, not even next game back. What is it like to finally get back on track when you go through a rough stretch like that? Because we talked about it. This was 5 losses in a row. It wasn't just one.
Yeah.
It's 5 in a row, and they get a massive win to end it.
I think, like I said, when we talked about it in the pregame show, and even before that, all it takes is one. And now you just how it can happen in a negative way with the snowball effect of a one loss trickling, making them 5. This one win can turn into 5 wins in a row as well. So that's kind of like the mindset that I had when every time we had tough losses or a bad loss, because it's the game of basketball. It's winning. You're gonna win some, you're gonna lose some. And now that you have the one big win, like which is the win, which is the next game, that you got to carry that on and move on into the next and try to get as many as you can from there until obviously you might hit another bump in the road. I think you and I both can say I don't think this team is going to go undefeated from here on out. But it would be nice for them to run on a streak right now and get a couple wins underneath their belt, because now they know they're capable to be able to hang with one of the top teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah, spoiler alert. I don't think anybody in the country's going undefeated from here on out.
Yeah.
It's just one of those years. And, we've seen Penn State has been a little up and down this year, especially, but I think you kind of nailed it, right? They need this to turn into more than one. And the way they won on Saturday should give fans and should give the team some hope that they can turn it into more than one, right? Like they finally started hitting shots from deep. We had talked about in the past, like that they just weren't making enough threes. They to shoot 41.7% from deep is like massive for them, because it's not like Ohio State wasn't hitting shots too. They shot 42.3% from deep on two more attempts than Penn State had. But for Penn State to make those shots and kind of get some confidence, because you talk about a guy like Leo O'Boyle, who, said after the game he had never been in a shooting slump that bad in his career, right? And then to come out and make 4 or 5 from three. DeMarco Dunn makes 2 of 4. Zach Hicks makes 2 of 4. Your two best guards in Kanye Clary and Ace Baldwin don't have the best games offensively, right? Like they combined for 28 points on 28 shots. That's not the best efficiency in the world, but they did enough when the team needed them. And for a guy like Ace Baldwin, we talked about him a lot last week, right? Like about how Penn State needed a better version of him on and off the court. They needed him to be the Ace Baldwin that was at VCU. For him to shoot a three in a big moment like that and hit it is, I think, pretty massive, and I think can do a lot to turn a guy's confidence and allow him to kind of feel comfortable at Penn State.
Yeah, it's huge. To be able to, have the confidence to even take that shot, knowing that you weren't shooting the ball well throughout the game, but your team needed it for, to you guys to be put ahead, and you had the confidence to shoot it, man. That's tremendous. Because there are a lot of guys that aren't built like that, and it just shows that his confidence and what he's done and the work that he's put in, was sitting in his mind. He's like, I can make this shot. I know I didn't make it earlier, but I'm gonna make this shot when it counts. And I know I've done it when you sit in those huddles and you telling your teammates, you know, I got you. I'm gonna make this. I'm telling you, we're gonna win this game. And I'm sure that's how he felt, especially taking that shot, knowing that, hey, he had the confidence that shot was gonna go in. I will give praises to the others as well. Like we talk about Ace and we talk about Kanye Clary, obviously the guys that take most of the shots, but you look at this game specifically, we got, I think it's 4 or 5 players in double figures. And you add Ace at 9 points as well. So, like, guys, it was contributed all around. And I think that's what helped us win, because if we look at the previous, it's been 1 or 2 guys, and then everybody else kind of just down and trying to figure out their role and get on the board. But to have five guys in double figures, scoring 10 plus or more, I think that was huge for the team to be able to be successful. Because, like you said, those 2 guys, the guys that took the most shots, man, they took a lot of shots and they didn't really make them. And, but to have somebody, those others, to be able to rely on and keep them in the game to the point to where Ace can make that big shot when he needed to be able to get to get the lead.
Yeah, no, and I think you mentioned, those other guys. I mentioned O'Boyle already, but DeMarco Dunn is one of those guys. We talk about Puff Johnson a lot, coming from North Carolina. DeMarco came from North Carolina too, right? He's younger.
Yeah.
He was a 4-star recruit, had the hype and everything. And it kind of wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't working, but it wasn't as seamless, I think, early when he started at Penn State. This could be one of those games that gets him going too. You mentioned the double figures. He has 16 points. I believe that was a career high. He was 7-11 from the field, 2-4 from 3. He was getting to his spots. He was getting the rim. He's a really good athlete, which is going to be important for this team because they press so much. For him to have 3 steals, Ace, I believe, also had 3 steals. They were making Ohio State uncomfortable, right? And this was difficult for Ohio State in an environment that maybe usually isn't great. Was louder than usual at the Bryce Jordan Center. I'll say that about the crowd and everything. But yeah, I thought those guys kind of really fed off of that energy, fed off each other's energy. We've talked about in the past too, like this team doesn't have an energy guy. It's only when the shots are falling that you know what I mean. They also bring it on both ends of the court. Ace said as much after the game that was true, and that was something that they'd been working on fixing essentially, and they were relying on each other to bring some energy, and that they were kind of being more of a collective with that. Because if you don't have that one guy, then everyone's got to do it, right? Like everyone's got to bring their little piece of it. And I thought they looked like they had a lot more energy on both ends of the court on Saturday. And I think, honestly, we might look back at this game as like the turning point for this team. There's at least the chance that happens now after what could have been a really bad stretch.
Yeah, it can be. And like you said, I think you mentioned earlier, they won the turnover war, which was huge. This is the team that we've been looking for. This is the Mike Rose team, the VCU pressing and forcing guys into turnovers. I think I'm not sure the number. I think Ohio State made 18 turnovers.
It was 16 to 8. It was 16 to 8. Yeah.
So to win that turnover margin, especially by that many, is tremendous, because that's the team that we're looking forward to. The guys that are scrappy, that are making these guys other teams turn the ball over, which are leading to points. And I know that they were down early. Penn State was down early, and those turnovers are able to help them and get back into the game. So you got to credit that as well. But that's the team that we've been looking for. That's the team that we've talked about since the beginning. The team that's going to put the most pressure on the other team as far as turning the ball over. And you said about the turning point. I keep mentioning it. All it takes is one. And right now, like they got the one. Now, I think it's finals week now. So you take care of your finals or whatever it might not be, and just feed off that energy, feed off that win. Obviously you can't get too high, you can't get too low in the season, but understand that we did lose 5 games in a row. We did lose the Bucknell, an embarrassing loss, but we did not leave week 1 against Ohio State. So the next opponent, Georgia Tech in Madison Square Garden, it's time for us to be able to show again the talk that we had before that, hey, we're going to surprise some teams and we're going to make some noise. And you've already done it now against Ohio State. Now it's time to take it to the next step and be able to do it now in one of the best venues in basketball in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, and you mentioned, getting that Big Ten win against Ohio State,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they're 1-1 in the Big Ten, and to me, the goal at Penn State is always get to 500 in the conference, right? If
500.
you can get to 10-10, you've got a shot. I'm not saying this team's going to do that, but through 2 games they split them, right? And that's what you want to
Yeah.
do. So I think they need to try and stay on that track. I don't know that it'll happen, but being competitive at least will give you the opportunity to do that. They were really competitive on Saturday, obviously getting that win. You mentioned Madison Square Garden too. This is one of those things. It's finals week, right? They have a week between games, so there's a little bit of
Yeah.
a lull, and you have to focus on some other stuff. They need to make sure that they're kind of on task this weekend, right, when they go to Madison Square Garden, because you can kind of get caught up, I think, in the arena and what it's like to play
Mm-hmm.
there and everything. But they have this week to kind of get right. And Mike Rhodes was asked after the game, like, is this a turning point? And he said, I'll let you know after Tuesday, right? And Tuesday was, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, their first practice to see how they were doing. We'll talk to Rhodes again on Thursday to get a little bit of an update to see where they're at. But this game on Saturday means a lot, right? Like it's one of 3 non-conference games they have left. They should win the other 2 against Lemoyne and Ryder, who are both over 285 in Ken Palm. I know the Bucknell game and everything, but they should win those 2 games. This is a different team than the one that played a week ago, I think, already. But getting this game then allows you, you're at 4 wins in a row, heading into a matchup on the road against Michigan State, which is not going to be an easy game at all. But if
Yeah.
you get 4 in a row after losing 5 in a row, and if you get one of those at a venue like MSG, I think it helps a lot, right? Like it allows you to feel like you can play anywhere. It's not a road game. It's closer to Penn State than it is Georgia Tech, but it is not at the BJC, right? Like they do have to travel for this. These kind of neutral site games, I think, are a really good opportunity. But this is an arena unlike any other, right? And it's
Yeah.
one that you've played in before and can, I know, speak to the mystique a little bit of what it's like to play in Madison Square Garden.
It's awesome as a pro, because now you're sitting there, you're going there, and you see all these comedians, these actors, these stars sitting courtside checking out the Knicks, and how crazy their fans are. They're like diehard, it's just like Knicks fans. It's just they have the New York attitude, the New York slang. It's just, man. So it's pretty cool to be able to go in there and compete against the Knicks and just have that thing full up. Like it's dark around the seats, the lights are on the court, everybody's sitting there watching, and then and just you just know the history of the venue. That like this is they call it the Mecca of basketball. This is Madison Square Garden. So I know, and for Penn State, I think the last time they played in there was the year before I got there, where they were able to win the NIT championship. So like we have some history there at Madison Square Garden. So I think I'm sure Rose is saying that as well. Hey, there's some history there. We got to take care of business. And this is a neutral site game against another great team in Georgia Tech. In the ACC. I think isn't it, John? It's the Big Ten ACC Challenge.
No, this is a just
Oh, just a
random
schedule
schedule.
then. Do
They
they not
actually
have the Big
almost
Ten ACC Challenge?
no, that last year was the last year of it,
I don't
unfortunately.
like
Which
that. I love that.
yeah,
I used to like
that's
that
a
because we used to always win it.
yeah, that's a conversation for another day because I love the Big Ten ACC
Yeah.
Challenge, and I think it's a shame that it's gone too. But this game actually was gonna be, I think, originally at State Farm Arena down in Atlanta,
Oh, in
and there
Atlanta.
was,
Yeah.
I think, booking overlap. Mike Rhodes said, and so
Hmm.
he got on the phone with Damon Stoudemire, who's the head coach at Georgia Tech now, and found this as a nice solution. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone that would say no. You know what I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
to playing an MSG. But you mentioned the 2018, 18 team also played there and won the NIT.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's been,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? There's over the last 15 years, there's been 2 Penn State NIT titles there. And there's,
Yeah.
like you said, some some positive history for Penn State. But it's pretty big, right? For a game that maybe won't be on many folks' radar outside of, Penn State and Georgia Tech. I think
Hmm.
getting this win would go a long way in putting Penn State closer to where it wants to be, right? Closer to that. You and I talked about getting like 17, 18 wins this year. I think that
Yeah.
winning this game brings that much more into focus than it was even a
And
week
just
ago.
just to put it that, sorry, John, to see we put it that it's not that the Ohio State game wasn't a fluke. Like, hey, we are here. We've had some bumps in the road and we bounced back. Like we're bouncing back. We're continuing to get better. Like I've told you in every episode, even last year with the team last year, that you want to be the best team you could be at the end of the year. And you're gonna take hits. You're gonna take knockdowns, and they've taken their severe of a knockdown with the Bucknell loss and then the losses in a row, especially in the tournament as well in Florida. So now it's time to, stand back up and continue to keep fighting. So these guys right now, they got a big win on Ohio State, man. Now you got the opportunity in neutral site in a historic arena. I'm sure it's going to be packed. I think, some Penn State fans are definitely going to come out and travel because, I think we have a great fan base in New York, as well as it's close enough for Penn State to be able to get down there. We talk about holiday season time, too. A lot of people are off. Man, so I'm hoping that Penn State will have a good fan section out there to be able to support those guys when they go out there and face against Damon Stoudemire and Georgia Tech, which will be another different brand of basketball that I don't know if they played against. I think there's going to be a different style, which all that does is just prepare you for the different styles of the Big Ten.
Well, and that's the thing. You mentioned getting ready for the Big Ten. That's the other reason why this is important because they got to win this one and then those two relatively easy ones, and then you're in
Mhm.
it. You know what I mean? Then
Yeah,
it's Michigan State, and then it's Michigan at the Palestra. Which, by the way, going to Madison Square Garden and the Palestra within like 3 weeks is a pretty cool run
yeah,
for the team to get to play in both those places. But it's not going to be easy in the Big Ten this year. Every team is in the top 100 of the Ken Palm rankings except for Penn State right now. Minnesota is the next lowest at 88, and Penn State doesn't play them until late January. So it's going to
yeah,
be difficult night in and night out. So they need to get this kind of confidence going from a win at Georgia Tech, and they need to build off the win at Ohio State. And they kind of need all of this to come together now because you trip up between now and then it's you're running uphill for a
yeah.
while at that point. So they're going to need this one. I think it's going to be a really important one. I am I am personally looking forward to it. Right, I won't be at Madison Square Garden this weekend, but I think it's going to
Mm.
be pretty indicative of what this season's going to be. Right, like it's rare that you can point to games and be like, it's not even make or break, but this is kind of the inflection point. It just
Yeah,
tells
yeah,
us, are they closer to the team that lost to Bucknell? Are they closer to the team that beat Ohio State, or are they in
yeah,
the middle? And
yeah,
I think competing against Georgia Tech and getting a win would go a long way in and proving that they have a chance to make the NIT this year. Because I know fans always want to make the NCAA tournament. It doesn't seem like it's going to be within reach this year, but I don't think I don't know. In the first year under a new head coach, I don't think like making the NIT is a bad thing, right? Like I think
yeah,
it's a good building block to getting to going where you want to go, especially for a program as it's been to the NCAA tournament 3 times in the last 25 years, right? Like the NIT bid can launch into something bigger.
yeah. And I'm not down on it at all. I think that I mentioned it just a second ago about being the best team you can beat, NIT, NCAA, whatever it might be. As long as you're playing the best basketball, you want to be playing at the end of the season. I think that's goes a long way when we talk about the team next year and where Coach Rhodes and he wants Penn State basketball to go. Um, But obviously, it starts with the next game. You got to win the next game. You got to go out there and put your best foot forward. And right after that, you don't even want to. Like I hate to even talk about. We talk about NCAA and NIT. Like we got so much. We got a long way to go. A lot of games, like you said, they really haven't even gotten to the thick of things in the Big Ten. And you never know. What I mean, I've seen guys where like maybe those 5 games, maybe the Bucknell was just this big, what I mean, changing point. And now we talk about, hey, Ohio, all we needed was one win. We got the one win. Now let's see what happens. Let's roll the dice and see. Hey, you never know. It might be 10-10, or it could be 12-8. I'm curious to see because I think we just don't know this team. Like I think that's part of the negative too because we don't know what team we're gonna get. We don't know if they're going to be locked in. Are they going to force turnovers today? Can they hit the threes today? There's so many what ifs in this team and what ifs and what are going to show up on the court. It's hard for us to predict. Like, hey, you know what? They fought hard. Then sometimes you could just say that, hey, we fought hard, we were just outmanned, we're outnumbered, we'll get them again another time. But for me, it's hard for me to see that because I don't know what team I'm gonna get. I don't know. Are you gonna get like you said against Ohio State, or are you gonna get the team against Bucknell?
And I think that might end up being, as strange as it sounds, like who this team is, right? Like I think not being one specific team is who they are, right? Like they're
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
be
yeah,
oscillating back and forth between having these really high highs and these really low lows. And I think, part of that is what happens when you get a first year head coach, right? Like
yeah,
you're kind of working your culture in, players are getting used to you, and you're looking at a transfer portal situation too, where
yeah,
everyone's
yeah.
pretty much new, right? You've got a couple
Hmm.
guys familiar with Rhodes, you've got a few guys familiar with Penn State, and then everyone else is new and they're learning each other, and all those two groups are meshing with the new group of guys. And so I think it opens the door for, really good losses and really bad wins in one year, right? Like I think,
Yeah.
we saw this Micah Shrewsbury's first year, they lost to UMass on the road. And I
Hmm.
think like that was not indicative of Micah Shrewsbury's tenure, right? It was just
Yeah.
a little blip maybe that okay, this is a team that's not going to be as consistent, but a lot of these guys on this team can come back next year. A lot of these
Yeah.
guys have remaining eligibility. So you're right. I don't think we know what this year is going to be, but I don't think the expectations have to be crazy high or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Like
I agree.
I think putting it in a spot where it's like, okay, year two now is where they can take off with Ace Baldwin
Yeah.
if he decides to come back in a final year of eligibility, Kanye Clary in year three, his second year under Rhodes, DeMarco Dunn is
Hmm.
coming into, you know what I mean? Like you get these guys
Yes.
as they're becoming like they're not just being individuals, now they're an actual team and a program, because right
Yeah.
now
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't feel like it's Mike Rhodes's program yet, right? Like it
Right.
feels like they're still figuring all of that out and what that's going to look like. I think it's going to be really interesting no matter what, though, because uh, this is a different time where I think results are
Hmm.
expected a little quicker because of the transfer portal, and so pressure will
Yeah.
be on people no matter what. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but you hear all the time, right, when guys put up numbers at one school and end up transferring to another school the next year because they want to make the tournament immediately, right? And so you have to monitor that always too. So I think that's why getting these important wins is going to be crucial, because they have to like show like, hey, you can accomplish what you want to accomplish here too. Like it doesn't have to
Right.
be, you don't have to head somewhere else. You can get that done at Penn State. And I think if they get that buy-in, then you know what I mean? I don't want to say the sky's the limit, but they can be an NCAA tournament team next year. They can,
Yeah.
continue to build off of what Micah Shrewsbury was doing last year. I don't want to say it's as good of a team as ever, but it is a good collection of talent, right? Like this
Yeah.
is not a group of guys that lacks talent. And at the end of the day, sometimes that's just going to win you basketball games. If they can figure out how to do it together, then that talent can really get them going somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Again, there's no I'm not putting any expectations on this team because I know it's tough. Coming in, new players, new team, new college, new city. Like everything is just new for this team. And yeah, there's guys that came back, but those guys now they're adjusting to the new coach. You said it. Everything is just going to be new. And I think just even now with college basketball, next year is going to be the same way because they're going to be new guys coming. You know what I mean? It's just so much. And with college basketball now, I believe the best teams. I would love for people to do the study of the teams that stick together the longest.
That get
That's
old and
always been
stay
the key.
old.
Get old and stay old. And I think I will be curious to see who wins the national championship this year, and go there and see how many players they've had that have been there the longest. Because obviously the best teams are for me, they're gonna be the teams that know each other, teams that have played each other, and know how to compete in that form from their coach. So we'll talk about that in the national championship and see who wins that, and we'll go back and do that study and see who stays there the longest.
Well, I think we saw that last year, right? Like with
Yeah,
last year's team, those guys, they brought in some additions, but most of those guys were in at least their second year with the program, right? Like Funk
right,
was
right.
an addition late, but like guys like Pickett, guys like Lundy, guys like Dredd, they knew each other and they knew exactly
Hmm.
what they were trying to get out of there last year, and so it came together. And that's the benefit I think of college basketball compared to something like college football. College football, you get 12 games, and if you lose once,
Yeah,
it's over pretty much, right? Well,
yeah,
twice now, I guess it's over. But in college basketball, you get 30 games to figure it out. You get 30 games to
yeah.
figure out who you are, so you can add like a piece or two every year, and you like build it up, right? But you have to have. I think
Hmm.
you're right. You have to have that core of guys that kind of knows who they are, knows what the program is, knows how to set the standard, knows how to do all that stuff. And I mean, you can hell, you can speak from experience right now, right? Like you're going to a new place, you are going to play with new teammates.
Yeah.
It's not easy to make those adjustments.
Mm-mm. Oh, not at all. It's not easy, especially you come into a new place, leaving your family behind, you trying to adjust to new teammates, new players, new coaches, new city. You know what I mean? You're not able to have everything that you're accustomed to, even for simple things that the things that you eat. You know, some of these guys they're going to Penn State. Well, wait, we got to change stuff up, man. You know what I mean? You know, it's different. Everything is different. The sleep, the people that you're around, the times of practice, and it's really just an adjustment, just to be able to adjust to that and be locked in. And like you mentioned, the team last year, they had one common goal. A lot of those guys were seniors. They was like, man, we got one goal. We got to go leave it all out there. And that's the same thing that's going to need to happen with this team and the next team and next year as well. Like we got to come with this one goal. What's our goal? And let's chase that and attempt to achieve that as hard as we can.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about this team. I don't know that there's a ton more to say this week, which is a weird spot to be in
Yeah.
because like
Hmm.
they did only play, one game since we last recorded, since we did that pregame show, and they're only going to play one more time, of meaningful consequence. So I think we'll learn a lot. I don't know about you. I have been watching a ton of NBA. I was saying before we recorded, this is just who I am. Like I watch
Hmm.
too much basketball in general. I know you were watching the in-season tournament at least because I think it was the last time we recorded. We both hopped off and went to watch Knicks Bucks. I think it was
Yeah. Yeah.
in one of the quarterfinals. I am curious. I've seen a lot of people complaining about the courts and everything like that. I don't know that you've ever played on a different colored court. Does that actually change anything when you're playing on it?
I don't know necessarily like the players. I don't think it bothers them. I don't. Were you hearing complaints from the players? I think the complaints is from the people watching. You know what I mean?
No,
Because
I
the
think
players, you don't
everyone's
really.
complaining.
Oh yeah, for me, like especially being overseas. Like I played on some great
Yeah.
courts, and I played on some terrible courts that have holes in them, and you know what I mean. So like, and then, in Europe, they have all these stickers and everything. Like, it's crazy. Like, last night I had a
Yeah.
game and I just slipped and I'm looking, I'm like, is the floor wet? No, it's because they have the sticker. And, so um, for the in-season tournament, like, I think it did its job. I think its job was to bring everybody together to be excited about NBA basketball earlier and before the playoffs. Because now it's become, hey, the best basketball is being played during the playoffs. So to have everybody focus, fans, players, coaches, everybody to be locked in, like, hey, we have a chance to win, win this tournament, which is awesome as well. We have a chance to play some type of playoff basketball, which prepares us for the playoffs, and there's a little incentive of making some money as well. So that really changes some players' lives. So it did its job. Like I have no complaints about it. Okay, you can always say everything you do. You can always say, well, I could do this better, or I could change the course better, or I could eliminate the point differential, or I can have it play East versus West, or whoever wins. Now I've seen reports that say whoever wins should get an automatic playoff spot. Whoever wins, you know what I mean. So it's so many different things that everybody's going to have their opinion on. That's going to try to tweak. But at the end of the day, the playoff, what is it, the in
The
season tournament? I
in-season
keep saying the
tournament.
play in,
Yeah.
the
They
in
need a
season
better name for
tournament.
this. That's the first change. Like they
Exactly.
need a
The
name other than
IST
the
is
in-season
crazy.
tournament. Yes.
IST is crazy, but the in season tournament did its job, and you saw it because I mean, you saw how hard these teams competed. Like you saw how hard Indiana came out every night and competed to win their games, and they had to go through some giants to get there, and that was the cool thing for me to see. It kind of even brought like a college Cinderella story
Yeah.
because nobody expected Indiana to make it to the championship. They go through who they go through Boston. They go through
Yep. They
Boston
went through
first, then get
Boston.
Milwaukee, and then have to
Yep.
go take then they go
They
then
took on
we
the
get to the
Lakers in the
Lakers.
final. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well,
So
and
it's
they
like
had to beat the Sixers and the Cavs in the group stage too. You know what I mean?
right,
So they really
exactly.
ran it.
Right. So that's like that Cinderella story you talk about in college when somebody's going through and they're knocking down all these powerhouses or the teams that are expected to win. So that was fun to watch. And then at the end of the day, you just saw how dominant the Lakers were and how serious they took those games because those are teams that when we think about basketball that maybe they take games off or the older teams like they rest
Right.
their guys, but to see Bron and AD and all those guys go out there and compete at the highest level as to if they were playing in the playoffs, I think it brought a smile to Adam Silver's face, as well as the fans, being able to come out there and watch it and support, and root and basically just root for their team.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it, right? Like it was successful, I think a lot of because these guys bought in, right? Because those
Hmm.
guys were so invested in it. And I've seen a lot of people give the Lakers shit for hanging a banner with the year on it. That's fine. Like the league wants this to have meaning. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
It's not going to be in its own individual banner like an NBA finals banner or anything, but it is like it's a nice banner with the year on it, right? To for times they won
Hmm.
the in-season tournament. So
And
I
I
think
will
that's only
say,
going to
I will say this, John, that I don't think that's a Lakers decision. I think that's an NBA decision.
I do too.
Yeah,
Yes.
that wasn't. I
Yeah.
don't
Like,
think that was a Lakers decision, but I do think the NBA wants to again to put pride into winning the
yeah.
in-season tournament. So to be able to hang a banner, like if you now you flipping that to tell someone like, and the Indiana, hey, we went through all this to win. We get to hang a banner, or teams that haven't won championships in a long time to be able to hang banners to show like, man, we're coming. Like we're up and we started off a young team. Now we're coming as well. Like to be able to have some type of to be able to show some type of continuity and winning next in the program.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right. And I think, what you said earlier is right too. They're going to tweak this. I think that's
Hmm.
not going to look like this next year, but I only think it's going to get better. They got the general part of it. They got it right. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they got people to care. They got people to watch. I was saying like I would move it to December and January because then you're really in the middle of
Hmm.
the season there. Because I watched the NBA in November because you're still like you're seeing guys on new teams. You want to see how they're playing and
Yeah.
everything. I think you hit that lull in like December and January
Hmm.
before the trade deadline and everything. And I think that's when you can really get guys to buy in, and you can really get some added eyes on the sport and on the NBA in general. But yeah, no, I thought it was fun. Like I thought the courts were fine. Like I think people were complaining, but it's like it's a good way when you turn the game on. Like maybe you don't know that it's an in-season tournament game. You don't know that
Yeah.
like Tuesdays and Fridays are the thing. It's a good way to indicate like, hey, this is an in-season tournament game with this like bombastic red court. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
told you right away exactly what you were watching. So I thought it was really cool. I thought seeing guys buy in that quick that early was really cool too. And playing, you mentioned the intensity. Like AD was going all out. You know what I mean? That whole
Yeah.
game, it had an awesome final. Uh, it does kind of suck that there is no like those stats, the final stats don't count for the regular season. The rest of them do, like the semis, the quarters, and like the group
Hmm.
stage. Those all count. But it's weird that AD has this massive game and it just doesn't like the stats just go in
Yeah.
like they happen
Just roll
here,
them
but
in
they
the
don't
trash.
count for anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh, but no, I think overall it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I honestly like I think it was JB Bickerstaff from the Cavs mentioned like expanding group stage so you're playing each team twice, like once at home and once on the road. We see that in European
Hmm.
soccer and like the Champions
Yeah.
League and
Yeah.
everything. I think that's a great idea, right? Like the more the better. I think the 82 games is a really long season. You're not always going to get people to buy in, but I think this is the perfect way to do it. And honestly, a really fun way to do it that the harm in it is negligible, right? It's like one
Yeah.
extra game for two teams, and that's it. Everyone else still playing 82 games.
Yeah.
And, I like it. And that's what's most important to me, that I had fun.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it did its job. And like I said, and there are going to be tweaks. There are going to be changes, and we don't even know how long the in season tournament might be. It might just be a 5 year thing, a 10 year thing, or whatever it might be. It might be something else that they decide to add on. But this year it did its job, and you can't do anything but speak highly about. I think it's hard to go in and change things about the NBA because the NBA has been
Yes.
around for so long, and this is exactly how it's been. This is how it's supposed to be. This is how we play 82 games. But to go in there and put your foot out there and to tweak things to try to see if it works or not, I think Adam Silver's done a great job. Like he's in season tournament and in the play-in, he's got it to work. I mean, obviously there are going to be some people that are going to be feel negative about it, but he's done a good job as far as or at least the people have done a good job as far as making it work.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe we get some European teams. Maybe we get some G League teams.
Nah,
They can expand this bad boy. Make
yeah,
it like Champions League soccer. Like I said, that'd be a lot of fun.
yeah,
I don't know how that works. It's a good thing it's not my job to figure out how that works either, though.
right.
But I think that's a good place to leave it this week.
Mhm.
We've hit on a lot today. I think you and I kind of talked a lot about how important this Saturday is, but it really is for Penn State. That Georgia Tech game is going to decide a lot. I think it is a noon tip, so that'll be early, a little later for you because everything's a little later for you over in Greece. But looking forward to hearing how you're playing over there. I'm sure it's going to go great. Of course, you can find Tim on Twitter at TimFraze23. You can find me on Twitter at Jon Sauber. You can find all of my work at CenterDaily.com. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.
See you.